So we're up to Kufain Zayin, and here we're discussing Lashon Hara, and we are up to Kufain Zayin, about towards the bottom of the page. There are, he says, six different categories of Lashon Hara nicks. So let's see what those are. Ho'echad, Mishu Omer Ra al Bnei Adam, somebody who says bad about others. Kenasu, V'losu, he did that avera, or he didn't do that mitzvah. V'lefamim yoymar doifi al Adam kosher v'noki. Sometimes he'll speak falsehood about a person who's innocent. Zu meshaker v'gam mesaper lashon hara. Then he's lying and telling lashon hara. Because lashon hara is not necessarily something which is a lie. It can also be something that is true. So here he's over on both lashon hara and lying. We're also commanded not to accept lashon hara. It's not that you can't hear it; you just can't believe it. Yeah. So when you hear somebody, laying on some nice, luscious lashon hara, you can relish it as long as you don't believe it.
I don't think so.
No. It's not a good idea to listen to it. However, there are scenarios when you are allowed to listen to it, as long as you do not believe it, and that is what's called lachush miboy. If somebody warns you about some potential harm or danger that might come across another person, he says to you, watch out for him. He's a dangerous guy. He's the type of fellow who will gain your confidence and then stab you in the back. You're like, so your lashon hara light goes on. Bing, 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 bing. Yeah. The lashon hara bell goes off. You're not allowed to listen to that, but you are allowed to take it into consideration as far as making necessary precautions. So you may not accept it as being true, but you are allowed to, like I said, to take precautions in the possibility that it might be true. What's that? Yeah, react or protect yourself, or yeah. Ulayu sheker. But in any case, here we're talking about it's an isser to accept lashon hara. I'm sure he'll bring the teaching which says lashon hara harms three people: the one who speaks, the one who hears, and the one who's being spoken of. The one who hears lashon hara is also being over the isser of transgressing the isser of lashon hara. You may not spread a false rumor. One who speaks it also accepts it. Why? Because he's saying it. The one who accepts, he agrees with the lashon hara that he's hearing, so he becomes like one who's actually saying it. Yomru kevan shu modeh imken emesu davar. Yeah, saying, listening to lashon hara and accepting it without objecting. Listening to it without objecting to it is tantamount to agreement. Somebody hears you listening to this and not objecting, assumes you agree with it. So that's as if you've spoken it, even though you're silent. That's called shtika kohodah. Person's quiet, silence, so it's as if he's accepted it. Otherwise, he would. Of course, if the scenario is such that people realize he's not able to respond. If he could, he would. That would be different. But for a normal scenario, you don't say anything. Maybe this is the source why people always make a point of saying that's lashon hara, or I'm concerned that might be lashon hara. Why don't they say, I'm not sure I should be speaking to you. Have you put on tefillin today? And people don't do that. Lashon hara they do. Maybe tefillin was, and lashon hara is, but that's also not true because a person is chuyev to do tefillin all day long. Yeah. So, have you put on tefillin? I'm not sure we should be speaking until you put on tefillin. No, lashon hara. Yeah, maybe because That's like that's this. Maybe that's in order to fulfill what's being discussed here. It's like raising an objection. I object to what you're saying, and therefore no one should consider my accepting it silently as if I agree. But and even if he doesn't agree, if he shows out as if he's interested in listening in front of other people, so other people are also going to believe. If he's sitting there and listening to it, it must be true. He actually is aiding and abetting the Lashon Harnik. Because if he would, what was the word I used before? Object to the Lashon Harnik, then he would have, the speaker would have stopped. But now that he's listening and he's showing him attention, he's actually causing him to speak more. Who doesn't want to be listened to? And if you're listening, you're causing him to speak more. And we were warned with the prohibition, don't do anything to spread a false rumor. We may not accept the truth of the Lashon Hara in our hearts. To consider in our hearts and our thoughts that this matter is true. And therefore to come to belittle, to think less of the person who is being spoken of. So I think he is being careful here about the point of the prohibition is like, technically speaking, not the audible hearing of the Lashon Hara, it's the accepting of it. So, for example, if you happen to have heard Lashon Hara, but you don't accept it as being true, there's no Isser on that. Or if you're in a scenario where you are forced to listen and you can't get out of it, as long as you say, I don't believe what I'm hearing, I refuse to accept what I'm hearing, so then he's not over Lashon Hara. The person who's speaking, yes. The one who's listening, no, because we're talking about audibly listening is not the Isser. Accepting what you're hearing is the Isser. Okay?
It's a fact about someone that the person doesn't know, right?
Even if he does know.
And listening to it is a problem?
Yeah, I think so.
It's something that you know about the person. It's obvious.
Yeah, but just the speech itself is certainly Lashon Hara. What are you saying? This person knows anyway. I'm just going over, rehashing it. So we both know it, and therefore there's no Lashon Hara because what? Because he knows it, so I'm not adding something he didn't know. So I wouldn't be over on Lashon Hara for speaking. And the other person who's willing to listen to it and agree with it in his heart wouldn't be over because he already knows it. I'm not sure about that. Is that what you learned?
No, I didn't learn it. I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
I don't think that's the case. I think that even if it's something, if it's something which is well known, technically speaking, the Mishnah Berurah, the Chavetz Chaim has a very long section about speaking Lashon Hara about somebody that he says, technically speaking, but he says, you could perhaps say it's not Lashon Hara because everybody knows about it. You're not spreading the rumor.
What if you're telling someone who's naive something about someone who already everyone knows something about, but you know that person's naive?
So even if he's naive and he doesn't know about it, but theoretically speaking, if it's public knowledge, if he's not going to hear from you, he's going to hear from somebody else because it's something which is going all around town. Everybody knows about it.
Right.
So again, I think technically speaking, that would not be considered Lashon Hara, even though he's telling it to this person for the first time because it's something which everybody knows. But there are very strict conditions about all of this, and that's why my recollection for probably 20 years ago is that the Chavetz Chaim says that a person should not rely on his heter of al pi talata, which is something which is spoken in front of three people, or something which is haver isle. Rely on the fact that once three people know about it, the word gets around, it's public. Still, you shouldn't rely on that because there are different conditions. And at the end of the day, you're speaking evilly about a person. The question is, what if it's not well known, but it's known among these two? Would that be, technically speaking, the same as something which is well known? Because there, even if some person has never heard of it, it's arguably it's technically permitted to tell that person who's never heard of it because it's well known it's going to get to him, even though he doesn't know it now. So you could be the one to let him know. All the more so it would seem to apply if you're talking about within two people. Two people know about it. On the other hand, it's not well known. If they rehash it, is it going to get out? So I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. It seems to me that it would be Lashon Hara. It seems to me that it would. Because by speaking it, you're reaffirming it, and you're strengthening it, and by the other person listening to it, he's strengthening it as well. The more times you say something, the more it fits in, the more it lodges in. So even if the person here already does know, but saying it again in both cases is going to strengthen the Lashon Hara.
But what if it's for the interest of that person?
That's a different story.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. If it's letoeles, that's called. If there's some practical benefit that in this person's knowing, then you can tell that person under certain conditions. And the other person is allowed to listen in order to, like we said, to safeguard and protect himself, as long as he doesn't accept it as being necessarily true. Lochush miboy means he's required allowed at least to take it into consideration as a possibility. So that's all been the first category. Second category, Hasheni. Shomar Lashon Hara, Shu Hemes. He said Lashon Hara, which is not false, it's true. Im yizkor lo beinoi uveinoi maasei avasav haroim over amash shekasu b'Torah lo yisanu ish es amisoi. He reminds somebody of something about their past, which is not favorable, even if it's just among themselves. He's also transgressing lo yisanu ish es amisoi, which is Losanu means you can afflict him. The verse is talking about afflicting one with one's speech. Yeah? Smiting him with your speech, offending him, hurting him, afflicting him. Hashaleshi, the third. If he embarrasses him about his father's, his ancestry in front of others, not just among themselves, but in front of others, the sage said, anybody who embarrasses his friend in public, ein lo chelek la'olam habo. So not only is it Lashon Hara, and it's also hayno as dvarim, but in addition to that, it's mevayish pnei chaver barabim. A person, according to this, such a person has no chelek la'olam haba, and we're also told elsewhere that it would be preferable for a person to throw himself into a fiery furnace and not embarrass somebody else in public.
It's not one of the three big sins, though, right?
It's true. Were you here when we started this topic, when we were talking about... Because you were saying, we were discussing that a little bit when we were talking about Lashon Hara being comparable to the three cardinal sins.
Oh.
And we were discussing that. It's true. It's
that's right. It's like the first paragraph. Or
yeah.
first cover, right?
Yeah. Were you here for that, right?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, you were?
I think I read it before we started.
So Lashon Hara is compared to these very serious things. Haraviyah, the fourth form of Lashon Hara. Imu modia to avois avosav bifnei v'nei adam shaloi b'fanav. If he speaks badly about his ancestry, not in front of him. Levayasho be'enei v'nei adam. To tell this over, spread the rumor to other people, to cause him to be disrespected by them. Al-Zeomer, regarding this, the Sage said, Kas mesapre Lashon Hara, the group of people who speak Lashon Hara, ein mekablim pnei shchino. They will not get to reward to see the Shechina. Either it's referring to in Olam Haba, meaning in the spiritual realm, or for Tchias Mesim. I think it's talking about Tchias Mesim, the spiritual realm. Such a person will not see the Shechina. Achamishi, the fifth form. Im hu Baal Tshuva, He's about tshuva. U'mesaper lav avonos rishonim. And he's talking about this guy's past deeds, what he used to do in the old days. Back in the days of the before picture. Bezei yesh lo oynish gadol. This is very punishable. Ki hashav ma'avonosav, somebody who returns from his misdeeds, avonos shelo na'asin sechiyos. His transgressions actually become mitzvos. Here it's Yerushalmi and Perez quoted. I understand from other sources that that's only if he does tshuva mi'ava. If he does tshuva out of love, then his zdonos become sechiyos. But if not, he just does tshuva out of fear. So the transgressions are nullified, but they're not going to become like for him sechiyos. In any case, the point is just saying that it's not my understanding that everybody who does tshuva becomes a tzaddik because his averos turn into schuyos. It depends on what type of tshuva he does. But in any case, he certainly doesn't have this baggage of bad deeds anymore because he's done proper tshuva, either out of yira or out of ahava. But he doesn't have the averos. And in the case where he does, let's say, tshuva mi'ava, it would turn out that it's actually embarrassing the Baal Tshuva about things which are actually meritorious for him. Remember when you used to steal? There wasn't a store you didn't take from. And what was really amazing is nobody ever caught you. Like, in the meantime, he's done tshuva. He's done tshuva mi'ava. And all of those acts of theft are actually now mitzvos. So you're embarrassing him about things which are actually sources of mitzvos. That's bad. It's like, I know somebody like that. He was kind of an underworld kind of shady character. Is that right? They call it underworld? No, is that right?
Underground? No. Shady
No.
is
Yeah.
good.
The mafia type.
People like that.
Yeah, be careful with me. I have important friends.
You too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and whenever I'm with him,
It's true story.
I don't make up everything I say.
No.
Some things are true.
Wait, you hung around with the...
I happen to know this guy. He was like, he was it's like a mafia type fellow. And whenever I'm around him,
He's still around.
whenever I'm around him and I live through it, I thank Hashem. You know, sometimes I'm with him in certain scenarios where there's other people that we know, and there are certain of those other people who are always reminding him about his bad, and I feel so bad for the guy. And it's people that he can't really say anything to. Like his mother-in-law. She's constantly, whenever I'm there, she's constantly finding an opportunity to remind him about this and that and what this and I feel really bad for the guy because he's such a tzaddik.
Right.
He's such a nice, sweet guy now. He's like he got a heart of gold. Yeah, I said he was in the mafia. Now he's in our mafia. He wears black. Yeah, he wears yeah, he wears. He's covered in black from head to toe. He walks around in the shadows. You can barely see him.
He's strapped with the best siddur.
Yeah.
They have to come back.
Yeah.
It's only so far.
He does a lot of his best work in the wee hours of the morning when nobody's around. Very special spiritual guy.
For goodness.
Yeah.
That trade.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a Maimer Chazal somewhere about the Magan using his skills for Torah. In any case, there are these situations where people have they've done tshuva, and other people always find it necessary to remind them and others about where they came from.
Sometimes they like them. It gives them that's the
Yeah, it could be initially.
came out of it.
I think most people don't like to be reminded, but even those who do, probably only initially, because you kind of say,
You're tired.
But after time, after 20 years, come on. Yeah, I mean, the person's like, he's married with children, he's like mainstream, so I have to keep reminding him that he did that. Yeah, so, life goes on, right? There is life after tshuva. Yeah. And furthermore, he puts a mikshol, a stumbling block in front of him. He thinks in his heart, he's embarrassing me, I'll get him back. I'll embarrass him too. So you're causing him to perhaps do an affair as well. And then they become argumentative. All of this tshuva will be ruined. And he might actually end up back where he started. Which might be why people tend to remind people like this about where they came from, because they're threatened by the fact that we look at where he is, where he was, and where he is now, and look at where I am. So they want to put him back. They want to put him down. Yeah. And furthermore, right, if people are being reminded all the time of where they were compared to where they are now, so then other people say, well, what's it worth it? You never get out of it. Here, look at this guy. He did tshuva 10 years ago, and people are still giving him a hard time over the things he used to do. So why should I should go into a community where people are going to keep reminding him of what I was? What's the point? And therefore, it has the result also of locking the gates of tshuva, barring other people from coming in. If you know that somebody else has transgressed the Torah privately, and he reveals to others, big sin. Because in the meantime, maybe the person who transgressed did tshuva, and if he was going to reveal to somebody, he should only reveal to a wise person who's modest and discreet, who won't embarrass the person. Rather, most you should do is refrain from having friendship with this person who you know has transgressed, unless you know he does tshuva, because you don't want to connect with a person who's a rasha. You shouldn't say anything. And if you are going to say something, it should only be to somebody who can actually do something productively about it. And even the person who hears it is hearing it the toeles, right? For the purpose of being able to help the person who's transgressed. But he has to avoid accepting it as being factual and true. And you have to find some subtle way of engaging this person with conversation about what happened and see if you can help him out of that rut. And if this person who transgressed is really a Talmud Chacham, anyone who is God-fearing, you fear sin, you should certainly consider him as having done tshuva. Even if this righteous person was overcome by the Yetzer Hara, that was, you have to assume that was just a one-off thing, and you have to assume that in the meantime he's done tshuva, and therefore you can't hold it against him.
What if it repeatedly happens? The person is righteous, definitely. He's definitely does a lot of things, but he's just really not perfect in his speech. And he constantly says things that might be offensive and things like that.
Why are you embarrassing me by telling that about me in front of the camera?
Not you.
So who is it? No. If it's not me, who is it?
No, it's not even like.
So it's you're talking about a basically a good person, but there's something which he does repeatedly. He must not know that it's prohibited. He must not know that it's prohibited.
Or he justifies it.
Or he doesn't think it's prohibited, or he justifies it, or whatever reason in his scenario, whatever he thinks it's. But if it's happening time and time again, it's hard to understand how he could be justifying it. But
or maybe the listener is unjustifying it, if that makes any sense.
The what? The
The
listeners
listener is doing the opposite
of what?
justifying his case, saying that maybe
Maybe he's really not doing anything wrong.
maybe it's not.
Yeah. So you'd have to say if the person is person is knowledgeable in Torah, and he seems to be to someone who's not particularly knowledgeable, just average, that he's doing something wrong, then you certainly have to give the person the benefit of the doubt and say either it's permitted and I think it's not, or he thinks it's prohibited. He thinks it's permitted even if it's not.
You have to judge favorably.
Yeah. So either way, you should try and clarify with someone, like. Probably better with somebody who knows him and who would probably be aware of the types of things that you're noticing about this person. Notice Rabbi A is a great rabbi. Don't get me wrong. I like learning from him, and he has wonderful things to say. But it seems to me that often he says things which are questionable. I don't quite understand why it's permitted. I assume it is if the rabbi's saying it, but why might that be? Because and if the other rabbi says, I know what you're talking about. Whatever. I can't really. I don't have a good explanation. So then, at that point, somebody should perhaps clarify, with the rabbi as well. I mean, the other rabbi might not be comfortable broaching it. Maybe the person would say, the Rav is obviously a Talmud Chacham and well known for that. There's something which just doesn't sit right with me. I'm just quite not sure, why the rabbi says this or that or does this or that. I mean, it must be permitted, but in terms of the impression it makes on people, it seems to people that there's something not quite right about it. Whatever. Just try and clarify it with the person. A person could take the liberty to do that. Anyway, if it is really a person, he's a Torah scholar, and he does something repeatedly, which seems to be wrong. Either he's right and we're wrong, or he thinks it's right, but he's wrong. And if it's the latter, then that can and should be corrected. Trying the right way is probably a little more difficult.
And if it happens once, we have to assume that he did tshuva.
Yeah. I mean, you could also assume that he did a mistake and he didn't realize it, in which case he might not have done tshuva because he doesn't realize he did it wrong. What we're talking about here is even if he did intentionally, we should assume that even though he did intentionally, since he is cognizant about its being wrong, but nevertheless he did it, we have to assume that he did tshuva in the meantime. If he does it time and time again, I guess your question is, do we have to assume each time he's doing tshuva? So, I don't know, I guess at that point, like it says here, the justification for this is he, as a one-off thing, he gave sway. He gave in to his yetzer. But if it happens repeatedly, so like I said, either it seems wrong and it's right, or he thinks it's right even though it's wrong, and it should be addressed. One who speaks lashon hara, he's going to be punished for the harm that he causes to his friend, the one he's speaking about. He's also going to be held accountable for the pleasure that he receives over the embarrassment of his friend. Uksiv, and further it says, love your friend as yourself. Just like he desires honor for himself, so he should be desirous of the honor for his friend as well. Somebody who's happy about the downfall, the time appointed, a bad time, for someone else, lo yinakeh, will not be forgiven for this. You cannot be happy about a person's misfortune. Yesh tzad shehiyeh avoin gadol al ha'mesaper lashon hara shu emes. There is certainly a side that would make a person very punishable for speaking lashon hara when it's true. Even more so than when the lashon hara is about falsehood. Ki kashadam mesaper dvarim peinim. Dvarim keinim al chavero. When a person speaks things which are true about his friend, ya'aminu lo v'hiyeh leboishes be'einehem achar shenischaret v'asa tshuva. And people say, well, that's pretty reasonable. He's obviously telling the truth. And since they accept it as being true, they're going to take it to heart and therefore despise the person even more on his transgressions. But lashon hara, which is patently false, it's a lie. So many people will say that can't be true. I don't accept that. So you have a situation then where lashon hara, something true, is worse than lashon hara, which is false, even though the false has the side of slander. What was the term you used the other day?
Defamation.
Yeah. But that's just an exception, because ordinarily when it's a lie, it's worse than telling the outright truth. Okay. That was the fifth. Let's just do the sixth, because that's the last one. Hashishi. He speaks evilly about the leaders of the community who are kosher. V'govim be'emuna, and they collect money truthfully. U'mechalkem li'yarei shamayim, they dispense the money among yarei shamayim. V'masaprim lashon hara le'em, one who speaks evil about them, saying that they don't distribute the money correctly, they take the money for themselves, for example. Shem goinvim hatzedakah, they take the money for themselves. V'noisim panim v'noistim l'mishem roitzim u'lekrovehem, or they unfairly decide how to distribute it to people who don't deserve it, or their relatives. Zeu lashon hara and aruch la'onsho. That's very bad lashon hara. Ki gorem she'oisam gaboim yistalku v'yisamnu acherim v'yismonu acherim roim imkoiman. Because he's going to cause these gaboim to depart. Tzedakah will not be given, and other, even worse, people can come in their stead. V'nimtza shemonea tov min hanoisnim tzedakah. They prevent good on behalf of those who want to give tzedakah. V'gozanim atovim, and prevent the money going to the ones who deserve it. Ki oisam acherim haroim lo yichmilu al atovim, because the bad agents actually will not help those who need it. So this person who speaks wrongly about these folks, he is actually negating the service of Hashem. And he's embarrassed the servants of Hashem, their children and their relatives. Rather than respecting these people who are doing a very good job, doing their duty and beyond to help other people with dispensing charity and such. Not only do not honor them for their great deed, he actually caused them harm. And to prevent other straight people from doing this, because they'll think, why should I do something which other honest people were accused of for doing? So I'm not going to get involved. So if good, honest, upright people are going to refrain from getting involved because other people are making up stories because of the bad feelings about those people getting access to money and so forth and so on, they don't really realize and appreciate how they're distributing it fairly, then people who are fair won't want to do it because they'll feel like it's a bad position to be in. And who will do it? The ones who don't care about being badly about because their intention is to do bad. Okay, let's stop here.